Welcome to a special Off the Books episode of the All the Books Show, the official podcast of the David A. Howe Public Library. We talk book news, author news, and literary news. But Nick, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're talking to my pal Phil Trautman, who's the director over in the Cohocton Library. Each week we've been doing little interviews with library directors from around the system here. Sally Jacoby Murphy from Hammondsport was the guinea pig. Not like your guinea pig.
Oh, okay.
And then last week we talked to Fred Savage enthusiast Tina Dalton from the Cuba Circulating Library.
Right.
And,
Fred Savage enthusiast, but also she sided with me about Jurassic Park.
She did. She did. She felt like if she had to choose between Citizen Kane and Jurassic Park.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying. I let Sally know that the vote is 2-1 in your favor. So she's...
Yeah. Remember when at the end of Jurassic Park when the T-Rex throws the raptor at the skeleton and all falls down and the banner is flowing behind the T-Rex and on the banner it says Rosebud?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the T-Rex's sled back in...
The whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it was surprising, but it also kind of made sense.
No, I'm with you.
Have you been, we haven't really talked about what you've been reading in a while. Of course, in the regular episodes, we're, months behind. So what are you reading right at this very moment?
So what I was reading was a library book I had to return, and I don't know if you know it. It's kind of hard to get library books right now.
I am aware.
And of course, I picked the one library book that's not on Overdrive or anything.
Yeah.
It's the Yiddish Policeman's Unit by Michael Chabon. So I haven't been reading that.
Okay.
So instead, I picked up The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss.
Haven't you been reading this for like 5 years?
So about 4 years ago, I started it, yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm going to click on it right now to see when the start date was. But I was about 500 pages in, which is halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just put it down and never went back to it. Hold on. I started this April 2nd, 2015. Basically, as soon as I started working at David A. Howe Public Library.
See, that's funny because I'm currently reading Joyce Carol Oates' Blonde, which I started in 2016 and got halfway through and stopped, and now I picked it back up again. So it's like we're in a time machine. So
here we go. April 2nd is when I started it, 2015. June 8th, 2015 is apparently the last time I put any progress into it. So I had been reading it for however many months that was. What is that? 3?
Yes.
3 months. And then I put it down. And so now I picked it up and I've made such slow progress. It's long. My love affair with this series is definitely cold, considering I loved the first book and it kind of changed my view on fantasy books and everything. And I was like, I can't wait for the second one. And I don't know, now I read it, and considering how long it's been since this book came out and the third book, I'm just like, you know what? Patrick Rothfuss might be a little into himself. I imagine he writes this book in front of a mirror so he can just look up and see himself writing and go like, there's an author.
Wow.
There's an author.
There's a bitterness to you.
So anyway,
it's
here's
subtle,
another thing.
But it does come out at times.
Over on my X-Men podcast, we're going to be spotlighting Rogue in a little bit.
Hi, y'all.
And there's a blind spot I have with Rogue in the comics, in that at one point Chris Claremont was writing the Extreme X-Men series.
Yes.
It was like 6 volumes or something. And she's in that, so I was like, I better read this. I have read the first 4 issues out of 6, and I have not been able to pick it up because so far, no good. And I mean, on this show, I've talked about how much I love Chris Claremont's X-Men, but his Extreme X-Men, when he returns, it's dated and it's not great, and he just has tropes that are done over and over and over again. Anyway, I'm only 4 issues into this 100 issue run. I don't even know.
Wow. Yeah. You got to do it. You got to go the distance.
I know. I just got to get through it. I thought maybe this would be comforting in this time of quarantine. I'm like, I'm just going to read some old-fashioned X-Men by the granddaddy of X-Men comics himself. Hasn't been what I wanted.
I'm with you, though, comic book wise during the quarantine here, because I'm reading Blonde still, Joyce Carol Oates' Blonde, and I'm in spitting distance at the end, but it is so heavy and so upsetting in a uniquely Joyce Carol Oates way that I've taken a lot of I read a chapter or a section and then I go and read something on the DC app or something like that, which is like a heaven sent at this moment when I've read every graphic novel that's just naturally in my house. But I've been getting through quite a lot of stuff that's been on my list as well. Anything that you're reading that you like or nothing?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I don't hate The Wise Man's Fear. It's good. It's just so long and slow. After a while, it's just like, you know what? Editors are out there to help you. I don't know. I finished season 3 of *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Okay.
So that was good, and I got one more season of that. I watched In the Heat of the Night for the first time
Oh, okay.
on the Criterion Channel.
Yeah.
We got the first 7 days free of Apple TV, so I've been watching Mythic Quest.
Oh,
So
understood.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we watched the Hobbit series and the Lord of the Rings series. So
Yes.
like,
You're going to be doing a Twitch review of The Hobbit pretty soon.
yeah, I have to. Yeah,
So,
not have to.
so
Wait.
keep an eye out for that.
All right. Yeah. What have you been reading and keeping yourself busy with?
Well, like I said, a lot of graphic novels. So I read a Star
Is
Trek.
Blonde the only book you've been reading?
Pretty much Blonde,
Wow.
and I'm listening to Diane Keaton's new book, Brother and Sister. But yeah, I'm pretty much like devoted to finishing Blonde, and then I'm going to move on to other things. But it's just so dense, you know. It's a long, involved read, and it's not a great one to like pick up and then the next day grab it again. It's like you gotta put some in there. But
Yeah.
I read a Star Trek Discovery graphic novel called Succession, which is set in their mirror universe, and so it was.
Did you
kinda
say
like,
graphic novel?
I did.
I didn't realize Discovery was in comic form yet.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's one that's just about the Klingons. There's this one, and then there's one coming out this month that has Spock and everything in it. This one was decent. It's the mirror universe versions of the characters, so it's kind of like the stakes don't matter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I read a truly awful Superman called Black Dawn, and I don't know if you're aware, but Superman Rebirth has not been good. It's not been kind to me.
Right.
And this was a story with Manchester Black from like Superman versus the Elite or whatever the... What is that called?
I don't think it's actually because it's just like 4 issues or
Right.
something. The guy is trying to prove to Superman that he'll turn at any moment and he can be a bad guy. It's kind of a critique on like the 90s grit of superhero comics.
Well, and this is kind of doing the same thing, saying that like there's no place for a good, kind Superman. And I'm like, you know, Zack Snyder beat you to the punch here, but it's just terrible. I'm tired of like the super dad storyline where it's mostly just like Superman parenting, and the Superman story, the Superman like mainline title has basically been a Super Sons book too. And so like I just want a Superman story, and they're not making them.
No, sorry.
I was pleased that I got in my Robin 80th anniversary order from Midtown Comics because I actually did get it in the mail, and I was very excited about this.
Nice.
As you'll hear all about my love of Robin in the next proper episode of the All the Book Show.
Robin.
But this
Would you say that graphic novel then swooped into your life like a Robin?
I would. It's a common expression, and I would use it in this case.
Yeah.
But this is like a lot of classic authors come back and write a story from their time. So like Chuck Dixon comes back and writes some Nightwing, and Tim Seeley writes some Grayson, and you know. It's good and bad. I would say the Jason Todd story is like surprisingly good, as is the Stephanie Brown. But it was a cool collection overall. I mean, I loved it, but it was more of sentimental value. I don't know how much you dig it, but I really did like that. That's it for me. Have you met Phil Trautman before?
Maybe.
Have you guys been? I should ask him that too. You know, I grilled Tina about all the other things that we were talking about Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. Shouldn't really care about Val Kilmer. Is there anything that I should ask Phil on your behalf? Any movie trivia or other things that you'd like him to weigh in on?
Let's see. Right, we talked about Marlon Brando and
A lot
Val
of Tom
Kilmer.
Cruise. I can ask him. I mean, I'll ask him if he's excited about Top Gun 2.
I guess, yeah. I
think-
mean, that's the only Tom Cruise thing, right?
Here's the thing. I mean, you're likely to get a no to that question, but boy, do you open a Pandora's box if the person answers yes.
If they like Tom Cruise?
If they're excited about Top Gun 2.
Oh, right, yeah.
I want to meet the person who's like, heck yes, I am. When does that come out?
Right.
Maybe it's Phil Trautman. I don't know.
Right.
But I intend to find out.
Right, because the layers are, is it Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Is it the series?
Yeah.
Is it Val Kilmer?
Do you like the Air Force?
Right, is it the Air
I don't
Force?
know, you know.
Is it some nostalgic value you have for Reagan's 80s America?
Right. Well, I'll get Phil to weigh in on his favorite 80s movie as well.
Yeah,
Find
that's
out,
what we need to know. If he
where
says
that
The
goes.
Breakfast Club, he's out of here.
You think? I
Yeah.
mean, it's set in a library. That makes perfect sense.
Ugh, so is the Page Master, but we don't push that movie on kids when they come into the library.
I can almost guarantee you that Phil's not going to say his favorite 80s movie is The Breakfast Club. I can almost guarantee that.
Okay.
But we'll see what he says. Should we do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome, everybody, to a special Off the Books episode of the All the Books Show, normally recorded at the David A. Howe Public Library. Right now, recorded from the back room of my house and wherever our guest, Phil Trautman, is. Phil, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Where are you
front
recording?
Room of my house.
The front room. Okay, all right, so that's an important distinction.
Front room of my house, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we know that. How have you been? How's isolation treating you so far?
So far, so good. Everybody here is still healthy, and we're navigating, I guess the same as everybody else. It's kind of a new experience for everybody, but everybody here is healthy, so we're not, nobody's had to be in total isolation yet.
What ages are the kids in your house?
We have one. Eddie is he's in 4th grade. He's 9. So we've been kind of balancing and my wife teaches in the school district, so we've been balancing Eddie's, the work that got sent home for Eddie, and then the work that she's had to, kind of walk some of her students through Google Classroom and stuff like that. So it's been pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly a weird time. We just have one too. My son's in kindergarten, so in some ways I think that's easier, but it's also difficult to keep him engaged and entertained, and he's just very social, so just having his old parents to hang around with, I think is challenging for him too. So it's hard to know what curveballs are going to come your way, but like you, I mean, we've been doing fine so far. It's just it's a weird experience that I would gladly be done with.
That's the truth. We've they sent home this packet of work for the kids, and the Wayland district closed 2 days earlier than they thought they were going to, so it was kind of an emergency thing. And it's been kind of fun to see what they've sent home. And then one of the projects was build a catapult.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, all right, fine, Eddie. So he built a catapult out of a plastic spoon and a rubber band and a tin can or something. And last week we built a catapult. I mean, it's like a 4 or 5 foot tall catapult out of lumber that was here at the house.
Okay.
And so we've been working through various versions of that catapult for the last week or so. So it's part of it has been really fun to do that kind of stuff, but then also it's I get that you're struggling with division, but I don't understand how to teach you to divide.
Right.
I don't get it. So
We've not built any catapults. My son's take-home packets are more like, how many apples are in the picture, So a little different. But
how many apples can you hurl across the yard?
Yeah, well, that's the next step, obviously. Have you been doing any reading while you're cooped up? Read anything good lately?
Yeah, actually, I just started to reread Joseph Ellis's American Sphinx, about Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
I'm a very large Thomas Jefferson nerd, and that has been one of my favorite books on Jefferson. And I figured now, what better time to start to reread it than now. So, fiction wise, I try to read anyway, kind of oddball stuff, not necessarily the stuff that is on our new bookshelf at the library. And I wish that I could remember the name of this book that was suggested to me now. But it takes place in some weird dystopian future in America. And it's about, it was randomly about a group of women who are, they call themselves librarians, but they travel. It seems they never really identify where it takes place, but it seems like it's out west, and the government does not approve anybody to have vehicles at this point. So these librarians are traveling seemingly the American Southwest or by horse and wagon, and they pick up this poor lost soul who wants to join the librarians. And I had no idea about the librarian tie-in. That was completely coincidence, I guess. Work to recreation, but so far so good, and an easy read. And I wish that I could remember the name of the book, and I feel bad that I don't know. So
it's a fun little mystery. Which
everybody can Google those terms.
I know. Yeah. I've been doing that while you're talking, and I have not been able to come up with a case of this, what this is called. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Have you? So are you a presidential history nut, or are you just a Thomas Jefferson?
My bachelor's degree is political science.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that I'm a presidential history nut. something about Thomas Jefferson's life and his role in the, the real early stages of the country. I just kind of always, I don't want to say it connected with it, but it always was more interesting to me. And his personal life and kind of the beliefs that he held, and then the way that he led his personal life. It's, he's a very, there's very two parts of the story to him. That was always, interesting.
Yeah.
So.
I read, not too long ago, a good David McCullough biography of Teddy Roosevelt, and it was just like the early years. It was just like young Teddy Roosevelt. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I've always wanted to read Robert Caro's Lyndon Johnson series, like his 5-part Lyndon Johnson series that he's been writing since the 80s. Four out now, one more. That's always been on my list, so maybe now's the time to dive into that.
Did you? How did you feel about the Roosevelt book?
I liked it. It was everything I've read with David McCullough. I feel like I like the majority of it, but he tends to go on these digressions that, in books like that, it can last 100 pages. So it was like, Teddy Roosevelt, we're kind of cooking along, and then Teddy Roosevelt has asthma as a child, and there was seriously probably at least 70 pages just about Teddy Roosevelt having asthma and what asthma treatment was like during that time. And it was just a whole little mini book about asthma at that time. And I was definitely like, okay, all right, David McCullough. It was the same thing with his Wright brothers book. It was like, most of it was really fascinating. And we just go in this weird little, like, I wonder what they were doing in France during this time. And it's like, okay, thank you. But let's talk about Kitty Hawk.
It's interesting. Yeah, that you mentioned the Wright brothers book. I have that book here with me as like a potential next choice for book club that we run at the library. And I had never read it. I've read other books that McCullough has written, but I'd never read the Wright brothers one. So, but you're right. He does seem he goes deep sometimes.
Yes, he does. He does. That Wright brothers book probably would be a good book club because it's a lot more slim than usual David McCullough books, and it's pretty focused, even though it wanders here and there. It is a pretty good read, and when you hear about like the personalities involved, so I bet that would make a good book club.
Well, I'm gonna have to get more into it.
I guess so. Have you remembered the title of this traveling librarian's book?
I did. It's called Upright Women Wanted, and it's by Sarah Gailey. The topic is just offbeat enough where it's it's still grounded and you can see it happening, and it's a blend of like old Western kind of mythology and what might happen in a kind of a 1984 sort of future. So.
Huh. Well, I really thought that I was going to, when you said it, I'd be like, oh, of course, but no, I've never heard of that. Is it a series or anything?
No, not that I can tell. I think this is the first one, the first book, anyway. If it's going to become a series, it's the first one. So, but I always steer people towards Robin Sloan's novels as well, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, which
Yes, okay. I haven't read those, but I'm familiar with them.
Oh, man, I absolutely love that book. Okay. And his last novel was called Sourdough. And I accidentally ordered what we thought was a second copy of the audiobook. And see, now we're talking about this again. I'm not going to remember the woman's name who read the audiobook, but when I read the book and then I went back and I listened to the audiobook, and again, it's a short book and the audiobook only took me like a week to get through in the car. Her interpretation of the characters in that, it was exactly how I read it in my head kind of thing. It was really, really well put together. So Robin Sloan is one of those authors that I always steer people towards too, because it's, he's weird enough for me.
It's interesting how much the reader of an audiobook influences the experience. It really drives home the fact that like being an audiobook narrator is an art. I mean, it's a performance, and you can really ruin a book by being bad, and you can elevate a book that's bad if you're a good reader,
Yeah, through your interpretation, absolutely. I know that there's been a couple of Dean Koontz books that I read the books and I thought, okay, like, all right. But then the audio performances of them, it was just like, okay, I totally get where he was going now with this book. Like that's what, the buy-in was. He's one of those authors that sticks out in my head that the audio performance has had that confirmative aspect.
I've never been a big Dean Koontz fan. I've tried with a couple of books, and I've never read something that was just a standalone. I've only read like Odd Thomas and the Frankenstein book.
I think that for me, the reason that I'm not like a huge, just if I'm going to pick up, if somebody's going to say, here's a Stephen King book or here's this Dean Koontz book, I just look at the Stephen King book, most of his books, and I'm just like, oh my God, I know I'm never going to get through that. It's like I would like to read Tom Clancy's books, but Mr. Clancy, please, or whoever's writing his books now, give me something that I am going to get through as a working father who also, I've got responsibilities at home and responsibilities at work and all the rest of that. Like, I know if I read a Tom Clancy book or a Stephen King book in that that half hour between when I can start reading and when I fall asleep because a book hit me in the face, I'm never going to get through those books. So the Dean Koontz books tend to be a little bit small, and easier to get through. So
I know just what you mean. I picked up a Tom Clancy book that I was planning to read, before everything went crazy, and I was like, no way can I focus on, can I sit down and focus on a Tom Clancy book for as much time as it will take while everything else is like crazy around me. So it's nice to have some comfort food, which is when I usually tend to grab like a Star Trek or a Star Wars book. Those are my go-tos to just sort of sit back and relax and not think about it too much.
Yeah, that kind of turn off your brain, so to speak, kind of reading. Yeah,
absolutely.
I've really enjoyed the new Star Wars books that have come out. The ones that Chuck Wendig wrote.
Oh yeah.
There was another. It was a compilation of smaller stories. Oh nuts! Canto Bite, I think that was the last one. I've enjoyed those.
Yeah, I haven't read that one, but I read a solo book by Ray Carson, which I thought was really good. But I didn't so much care for the Rise of Skywalker novelization, which I just finished.
See, I've left the novelizations of the movies. These new the episode 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, I have really enjoyed. I really have enjoyed them. I think that episode 9 I left the movie theater like really happy with where the story was at. Yeah. And there's a clear path forward, I think, for the franchise that doesn't, it's sort of no longer the Skywalker story arc. Yeah. But there's a clear path forward, and it's like, okay, cool. I don't have to run out, and although I am today, signing up for Disney Plus to run through The Mandalorian. Yeah. But the novelizations of those movies, I'm like, I'm gonna stick with the screen interpretation of it and get through it. But I'm gonna have to look up the Carson, the solo book.
It's called Most Wanted, and
cool.
I don't know. I think it's actually a YA one, but I don't know. I just I really liked it.
Some of those, I mean, I'm sure that this, when you were, the same age essentially, that in the 80s and the first part of the 90s, really, they were making those, they were the Star Wars, the expanded universe, kind of the novels. The novels were getting cranked out all the time. I loved picking those up, and between myself and a couple of my friends and neighbors, we would, we had them and we would trade them back and forth just as people finished them. So I used to really enjoy getting into the expanded universe that way. So
the Thrawn trilogy, the Corellian trilogy, Jedi Academy trilogy, those were like my top favorites.
Yeah, very, very good.
Yep. So we've had a couple of questions that have popped up for the directors over the last couple of weeks we've been doing this. And the first one is one that Eric originally posed to me, which I had to laugh at because I have never done this, but I'm going to put it to you. When was the last time you slept until noon?
Oh, man. I can't even honestly remember. I'm sure that it's probably happened, maybe once since we've had our son, but I can't imagine it happening more than that over the last 9 or 10 years.
I know.
That's a good question.
I'm jealous of people who can just like fall asleep wherever. My wife will always be like, well, why don't you just go take a nap? And that's just not something I can do. It's just, I've never been able to do that, and I'm not good at sleeping in. So like, these are just not skills that I have.
Yep. So I'm just going to operate on less sleep.
Yeah, pretty much. Where did you grow up?
I grew up west of Rochester in Churchville.
Oh, okay.
I graduated from Churchville Chi High School, so not too far from where I am now.
Yeah, no, I know that area. Yep, I'm originally from Michigan, so this is a little bit. I'm about 8 hours from my hometown. Came here for college and then just stuck around ever since. Were you a library user as a kid?
And then you stayed.
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yep, I did stay.
You know, it was funny that when I was listening to the interview you did with Sally, that that you mentioned that you don't have any like real vivid memory of being at the library as a kid.
No.
And I thought about that, and I really don't either. I mean, I remember what the library in my elementary school looked like, but I don't have any kind of real vivid memory of something that was like, I love this place. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Junior high or middle school, whatever. I don't remember what that library looked like. I remember the library in high school, but like as a kid, not really. I mean, not that I wasn't a library user, but I don't think that my family wasn't.
Yeah.
My grandfather, my mom's father, just always had, I mean, if he had less than 3,000 or 4,000 books in his house, like I would be surprised, especially when I was younger.
Yeah.
And, like every issue of National Geographic from like 1960 something to 1980 something was on the back porch. So there was I always had access to my grandfather's kind of informal library, but not, I don't have that connection to being, really young and being in the library now.
Were you an active kid? Because I can tell you, I was not. I did just about everything I could to get out of gym, and I hated sports and that sort of thing. That was never my thing. The only thing that saved me from getting picked last every gym class was that I had a lot of friends. And that was it. I'd get a pity pick, about middle way through.
Yeah, I think that I was. I mean, to this day, one of my best friends, we grew up next door to one another, through elementary school and middle school, and he lives now in Rhode Island, but we still, are very much in contact. So we were, from the time my family moved next door to his, we were outside a lot, and playing basketball or skateboarding or riding our bikes or whatever. Before they built a housing tract behind where we lived, it was just a wheat field, and there was a big hill in the middle of the wheat field, and we would hike back through this wheat field, forever. As before, obviously, our parents didn't care if we were covered in ticks or ticks didn't. It seemingly didn't exist 35 years ago. But yeah, I guess I would say that, I was a pretty active kid.
So active, but not necessarily sporty. Like, were you playing like organized sports and that sort of thing?
I guess like I remember playing. I played, like summer rec baseball and soccer, and I played basketball a little bit in high school. But my time in high school was occupied with various other endeavors. I don't know the I don't know the proper way to put that. I mean, I was not the. I mean, I don't think I was a troublemaker. I wasn't in a whole bunch of trouble in high school or anything like that. But there was a great deal of jackassery, I guess, but with me and my me and my friends.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. All right, that's funny. Who was your celebrity crush when you were a kid? When you were like in junior high, who was your celebrity crush?
Oh man, like excluding Princess Leia, because I think that those of us of a certain age probably junior high. Gosh, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go to my fault and maybe say Elizabeth Shue.
Oh, okay.
That might have been Elizabeth Shue. I mean, it's
from something in particular.
I'm trying to think of what I would have seen her in, in middle school. I guess it would probably like the later Back to the Future movies.
Perfect. Yep. 2 and 3. Yep.
Then she was in. I guess I was probably in high school when The Saint came out with Val Kilmer.
I love that movie. We were just talking about Val Kilmer last week too. That's funny.
That movie gave me a great appreciation for Val Kilmer as well. And I still defend my stance that he was the best Batman.
Interesting. Eric and I have discussed this at length. I always feel like Val Kilmer I think he's such a good Bruce Wayne. I don't know that he always nails it for me as Batman. What do you? But you're both.
No, he definitely does.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Oh no, if you're gonna pick who is the best Batman, I don't even know, because I think that Christian Bale did a pretty good job with it with the new movies. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess I just like Val Kilmer.
Yeah. As a kid, I loved Batman Forever. Watching it more recently as an adult, I was kind of like, I don't know if this holds up as much, but I weirdly thought that Ben Affleck was a good Batman trapped in bad movies. I would have liked to have seen a really good Batman movie with Ben Affleck getting a chance to do that. Did you care for his performance at all?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of the new DC movies all the way through.
That probably makes sense.
I feel bad about that because I think that, what younger, as far as comic books goes and things like that I was definitely, as far as superheroes go, if I had to choose, I'd choose DC. Mm-hmm. But they just, and I get that, that the movies are different. The DC movies are very much, they're darker, and it's not as much of that they're almost designed to be a little less uplifting visually.
That's
than the Marvel ones,
with the exception of Aquaman. I would say I think Aquaman is right up there. It's very appealing visually and has a lot of bright colors. So if you were gonna go in and try some of these new DC movies, I think Wonder Woman and Aquaman would definitely be worth your time. I can't imagine a world in which I'd watch Man of Steel or Batman v Superman or Suicide Squad again. But Wonder Woman and Aquaman are solid.
Yeah, I have seen, now that you mention it. On TV, the first Wonder Woman movie.
Okay, all right.
And enjoyed it. Actually, I really like Chris Pine as an actor. I think I think he's really good. Yeah, I think that was almost you could not have picked a more perfect actor to resurrect Jim Kirk. And whether that carries his star a little bit brighter, but I think that he was really great in those movies, in the Wonder Woman movie.
I feel like I should just tell our normal listeners that I did not put Phil up to saying all these things that I so agree with, because I've been singing Chris Pine's praises, especially Chris Pine as Kirk, for many years now. So I couldn't agree more. I think he's perfect as Kirk, and I think that's a really difficult. Yeah. It's a difficult character to play, especially when you got William Shatner in your head. But I feel like Chris Pine really splits the difference well. He has some Shatnerisms, but really takes it in a direction that makes it modern and cool. So yeah, I like Chris Pine whenever he shows up.
Agreed. Are you a Star Trek guy as a rule?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You?
I'm Star Wars first and foremost and always, but my uncles kind of ensured that I had a very good dose of, especially the original movies.
Mm-hmm. I love those movies.
And then afterward, so yes, I am, but Star Wars will always be, just a little bit more than Star Trek.
Are you, speaking of Val Kilmer again, are you excited that they're making a Top Gun 2? Right? We've been having this ongoing debate about who this movie is for, so I was wondering if it was for you, but maybe not.
I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about, the story behind it to really make a decent judgment.
Yeah. Top Gun is not a movie that screams for a sequel. That's the thing. I don't know why you'd desperately need a Top Gun 2.
I don't get it either. I think that Hollywood has officially just completely run out of any semblance of an original idea.
That's what I hear.
Really, if anything that has been a remotely original idea that hasn't been based on a book for the last 10 or 15 years. How much of it has really come from traditional Hollywood? I don't know how much of it really has.
Yeah,
it's all relaunching franchises and things. I'm only 40 years old, and we're on the third Spider-Man I think.
Yeah.
As far as movies, like, I get that they want to keep milking some of this for what it's worth, or to try and keep it fresh, but the world survived a really long time without a single Spider-Man movie at all.
It's true.
That wasn't animated, I guess, and now we're on our third Spider-Man, like, relaunching the franchise for the third time.
It's a lot. Did you see Into the Spider-Verse, which has Chris Pine voicing the original Spider-Man in that movie?
It was so good.
Yeah.
That I haven't done it yet, but I will add that DVD to my collection. I thought that was. I thought it was great. I thought it was.
No complaints.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So what kind of movies do you typically like? I mean, what's your era for movies?
I probably skew sci-fi fantasy.
All right.
A little bit more than I thought the first Expendables movie was. I thought it was great. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't a cinematic masterpiece by any means. But if you put all of these guys in movie together, what do you get? You get Expendables, the first Expendables movie. I thought it was great. Now I think they've made 12 of them. Or
that's a movie.
Else,
that first Expendables movie is one that just knows what it is and doesn't try to be more and is not less. You know what I mean? It's just get all these action guys together and like go have an adventure, and like that's what it sets out to do, and that's what it does. So like I don't see how you can complain about that movie. It
was exactly it. The first couple of Fast and Furious movies I thought were good. I mean, again, I don't think they're going to go down in history as, Citizen Kane or 2001 or anything like that. But again, for what they were, they're, really pretty good.
Those crack me up because of the way the scope has changed. Like the first couple of movies is just about like underground street racing, and by the end they're like driving a submarine on the moon or something. It's just gone. I don't know.
Yes.
It's off the
by
charts.
Fast and Furious, 10 or whatever, they will be it'll be a full-on space battle or something.
Yeah, I can't believe it hasn't happened already, honestly.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. You mentioned Citizen Kane, and that brings up an ongoing debate that we've been having. If you had to pick one movie, would it be Citizen Kane or Jurassic Park?
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yes. This is Eric and Sally have had this ongoing fight for many years now, and now we're making it public, so...
I think that as much as I really do enjoy Citizen Kane, I probably have to go with Jurassic Park. I think that if you were going with one movie, like you were only going to watch one of those movies forever.
Well, if it was like, what do you think is better? What do you think is like a better movie?
Man, I don't know. Then they're really neck and neck.
All right.
It's like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant thing. It's like the two different times, and what they meant to movies, I think at the time, they both meant equally as much, but it was a different time. Gosh.
Yeah, it's a tough
That's
one.
Really good. I don't know. That's hard to pick sides.
It's an unfair question, definitely. I'll tell you, so far it's been Eric and Tina on Jurassic Park side, and only Sally on Citizen Kane. So that's where it's come down so far. Let me ask you an equally difficult question, and the answer to this can't be Phish. Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Beatles.
Okay. All right.
I won't even hesitate.
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think that's
as much as I love.
Question.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I still think that, though, overall, I think the Beatles have just meant so much more to so many more people. The Stones could honestly have hoped to.
I just think their goals are so different.
That's not to say that I don't.
Yeah, I mean, just the kind of music that they make, what they were trying to accomplish with that music are just completely different things. And so it's really hard to put them neck and neck. But, I mean, I'd give it to the Beatles, too. And I think they have the benefit of... We miss the Beatles, like I just saw the Rolling Stones in concert last year, so like we've had all this time to we have these 10 albums and
that's a good point.
And this ended in 1970.
That's a good point.
And so we've had, generations now to, appreciate the Beatles, whereas the Rolling Stones have a new album coming out. So it's hard, but it's always interesting to, Eric would answer Led Zeppelin to that question, which I think is an obnoxious answer, but
it doesn't count.
I know.
It shouldn't count.
That's what I'm saying.
That would be if you ask me again, the Stones or Zeppelin, I'd pick Zeppelin.
Okay.
Even though, and I always get a lot of flack for this. If you really spend the time to listen to Zeppelin, and they don't really make any kind of, they don't try to cover it up at all, but so much of their music was essentially lifted right out of the playbooks, however you want to, whatever cliche you want to use, from blues artists that came before them, and like blues and jazz artists, and they basically didn't credit it right away. Like when Led Zeppelin was out, tearing up the entire globe, they didn't really credit it. They've sort of backed off on it now, some of the remaining members of the band, but for the way that they ripped it off and put it together, I mean, I'd pick Zeppelin over the Stones too.
Eric has a podcast called Is It Classic, Does It Rock, where they go through bands' albums and do like a deep dive into each one. And they just recently covered the first half of Led Zeppelin and talked pretty extensively about everything that they've borrowed, let's just say, from the era before that. Yeah, interesting. It's interesting. Let's talk about Phish, though, because I always, when I see you, I think of Phish. Because how many times have you seen Phish in concert?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, less than 100, more than 50.
I like when the scale. Yeah, I mean, when the scale is 100, that's in the running. Okay.
Yeah, less than 100, more than 50. I don't know, honestly.
This is how many times. Phish is just a complete hole in my music knowledge. Like, I'm sure that you could play me like, the most recognizable Phish songs, and I would be like, oh yeah, but I couldn't. If my life depended on it, name for you a Phish album or song. So tell me, as somebody who doesn't know anything about Phish, first of all, how you got into them, and where would you start somebody like me who's never listened to them?
I got into Phish in a
big bad way.
Yeah, I mean, I was in like 9th grade probably, and I had always, even in 9th grade, I'd listen to, and I still do, alternative rock or whatever.
Yeah.
And there still is a radio station in Rochester, 90.5 WBER. I mean, it was like essentially from like 6th grade through high school. It was like the only thing the only radio station that I listened to. And they didn't play Phish, but like people that I knew listened to Phish. And it was, at the time anyway, different enough where I was like, all right, cool, I'll give it a shot. And then I don't know. I just, something about it was, a little bit more involved. There was more, jazz elements and classical elements to it than just kind of an alternative rock band. And then, that was it. And then I kind of fell down the rabbit hole, I guess. The thing that I appreciate most about Phish, though, is probably, musically, I think all 4 members of the band are virtuosos. I've thought that for a long time. And they play together. I mean, they've been doing it together for 30 or 35 years now at this point. And it's, when the live experience is definitely where it's at. It's like, it's such an effortless thing for them, especially now, that it's like watching any artist or craftsman at the peak of their skill, and they're at the top of their industry, whatever it is. That's kind of what it's like for me in Phish. There's a few like select live shows that I suggest to people. There's the first time I saw Phish was at Darien Lake, August of 1997, and it was this completely bizarre experience. Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters were there and running through the crowd in full costumes, and they were up on stage, and it was very, like, even kind of expecting something unique to happen at the show. I don't know that anybody there was really expecting it. And I had just read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test during my senior year of high school. So I was very, Ken Kesey and the Pranksters, and that that part of the 60s and the first parts of the 70s were fresh in my brain, I guess, my knowledge of them.
Sure, yeah.
So for that to have happened at that Phish show, it was like, okay, now I can't ever stop loving this band.
Right.
Darien 97 kind of covers the bases, and 97 was a really funky period in the band's kind of live playing.
So did they put out a lot of live albums then?
Yeah, for a bunch of years, they have offered, they were like one of the first bands to do the live, get a copy of the show, like at the end of the show.
Yeah.
And they host all of those on their website. So you can buy, basically any one of the shows, a live copy of the show for like almost the last 20 years, give or take. And they've gone back and they've released a whole bunch of archival stuff from for that time. So
if I was going to go pick up an album, what do you think it should be?
Studio album?
Well, whatever.
Well, sometimes, the studio albums, sometimes it's easier for people to get into, and they're all, I think they've all got their positive attributes and they've got their, they've got some drawbacks as well. But Hoist was pretty accessible, I think, for the most part, and it has a bunch of songs on it that they've continued to play live. And a few years after Hoist came out, they released a live album. It was called A Live One, which has they kind of picked and pulled songs from different shows and put them together.
Okay.
It's not necessarily just one show all the way through. That's a really good representation of where they were kind of in the end of the 90s. And really any of the shows from if you look it up, the Baker's Dozen, they played 13 shows in a row at Madison Square Garden a few years ago. And they played 13 shows in a row. They took one night off, I think. They didn't repeat a song for the entire run of shows.
That's insane.
It's out of control. They played 2 sets, every night. Any of those Baker's Dozen shows were, I feel they were all really, really good.
That's pretty amazing. 13 shows back to back, no repeating songs. Meanwhile, Ringo Starr's been singing the same set since 1972.
Yeah, just changing the players that are playing with them.
Yeah, pretty much. Are you a Jefferson Airplane Hot Tuna fan at all?
Not so much Hot Tuna. Not that I don't appreciate Hot Tuna, but Jefferson Airplane, I've always liked. I mean, that was weird stuff at the time.
Yeah, definitely. A friend of mine and we just went to see Hot Tuna at the end of last year, and it made me think of that because they do the same thing. They've always put out their concerts. You could just go and find the concert you went to and download the whole thing, which is such a cool thing to do. I mean, I saw this McCartney show in Buffalo that he just did. He picked the weirdest songs. It was such an unusual set that I would love to have that concert, and of course you can't. So I really like it when bands make that possible.
I think it's a very cool thing now, like kind of where we are with technology. I think it's a really cool thing. And Pearl Jam, when they first started doing the same thing, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Because they were going to just start releasing like every show they'd played that they had recordings for. And I guess I don't know where they've decided to stop that project, but still, if you go to see Pearl Jam, you can get a copy of the show, later that night, the next day.
I wish more bands would do that because it's so nice to have that, like, you're really attached to that live experience that you've just had, and it's nice to be able to take something home like that that represents what you just saw. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
So at the top of the show, I was telling Eric that I feel like the Cohocton Library is one of the most unique in the system, just because of its weird history and its weird spaces. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So our library is on kind of a typical Main Street, Finger Lakes Village road, and our library occupies 3 of those old-timey storefront buildings. And it used to be, before the library moved in, it was a furniture and floor covering store. So the whole building at one point was broken up and sectioned off to showcase sets of furniture. And the library didn't have a ton of money when they moved in. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that still exists in the library. And what we've been able to do over the last 4 or 5 years is to keep some of that charm, because it's like the one thing that people point out when they walk in the library all the time is they just appreciate the charm. but at the same time make the building and the rooms themselves feel a little more cohesive. Before we renovated the juvenile room, that room had 6 or 7 different floor coverings in it, and
very
about
lush
10 different
carpet, as I remember. It was very,
It was super soft and super old. Actually, the guy that helped us out with the carpet tile that we installed there, he used to work for the Carpet Rack, was the name of the store.
Oh, okay.
In the library. And when he came in to give us the estimate and we started talking about redoing the floor as part of the renovation, he looked down and he was staring at the carpet. And I go, is everything okay? And he said, no, everything's fine. He's like, I installed this carpet here like 35 years ago.
Oh, full circle.
So he had installed that carpet before he went off to start his own business.
Yeah.
And it actually was in, it's we say it as a joke, but that particular really ugly beige-ish orange carpet was in really pretty good shape for the amount of traffic that got. So then he got to, his guys tore it all out and everything. So, but we've tried to keep some of that charm, and it actually helps us break up the collections a little bit more naturally, where we can leave picture books are definitely in their own visual space. And the same thing, with the juvenile fiction and our YA collection is kind of moved to the back corner of that room. So it's, it can be broken up so that they're definitely their own collections.
Well, I think it adds a coziness factor to it as well, because one thing that always frustrates me about our building, and I can't complain because I love the David A. Howe Library, the building. I was struck by it when I first walked in the door, but it has a distinct lack of like nook type spaces because it's so big and so open, wall to wall shelves. It's like you can't really have a nice, quiet little corner, which I think you do so well in your space.
Yeah, it's difficult for you guys to break up that space, and it's I couldn't. You're talking about your building real quick. When I think the first time I saw the David A. Howe Library was for I think it was one of the field trips that that we did, and I just remember thinking I think only ever been through Wellsville once before, and walking up the stairs to the library, I was like, it's amazing that building exists middle of nowhere. Not to, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No,
but
you're absolutely right.
Middle of nowhere at Southern Tier. It's such a cool building.
It stands out from the landscape as well. When you're driving along Route 19 and you pass it, it's like, wait, what is that? It's the last thing you expect. So I know what you mean, definitely.
Yeah.
And see, I've always thought that we cornered the market on a library with the most creepy spaces in it, but I think that Cohocton can really give us a run for our money, considering your haunted basement.
I think that just the basement is in that building. It's so weird, and even now, and I've been there for 5 years now, just about, and I still, in that basement, it's parts of it are finished, sort of, parts of it aren't, and I found that underneath the kind of the one, good quote unquote staircase.
Because most of the staircases are still there, but they go to nothing. They just go to flat ceilings. There's no openings.
Yeah, there's even staircases that are just totally enclosed between the first and the second floor. Yeah, I guess there's one staircase, but it's just totally closed in.
No thanks. Yeah,
we have plenty of creepy places there. It's it's part of what makes going into work every day. Not now, but normally going into
when
work
we
a
were
little
doing
bit.
That thing,
Yeah.
But you found a new creepy space.
Yeah, underneath the one staircase that I still let other people use when they've got to get down to the basement for stuff. Right. There's just a wall that's kind of built out, and it's old stone foundation. It's the same era as the rest of the stone foundation of the buildings, but it kind of sticks out into the basement a little bit. And I had never noticed until really just within 6 or 8 weeks probably that there is a hole kind of knocked through the stone that's there into it's just a void. There's just to the back of the foundation wall. There's nothing really there. There doesn't appear to be any pipes or plumbing or electrical at any point in there. It's just really weird, and it's very the Kevin Bacon movie. It's very Sixth Sense.
That's Bruce Willis.
Yeah, Bruce Willis. That's the one. It's very Sixth Sense.
So I'm having trouble picturing this. So it's like you can see a space through a hole, but you can't access that space any other way. It's just like because there's a hole there, you can see into this like hollow little cavern. Yeah,
basically, and it's not very big. I mean, if you could get in there and sit in it, I guess if you were crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, and it's obviously it's always been there, at least in the time that I've been there. But I just never felt the need to walk underneath that staircase for anything. Still, every once in a while, I find new weird and creepy things about the building. It's fun.
Here, I thought that it was just going to be our listeners who were learning today, but I've learned something new about the Cohocton Public Library. So thank you for that.
I try to keep it interesting for everybody.
Yes. Well, Phil, thanks for taking the time to sit down and talk to me about everything from catapults to Pearl Jam to Star Wars. That's an interesting trajectory that we've been on here. Before I let you go, I have to ask a question that's come up in all of these interviews, and that is, what's your favorite 80s movie?
If I am being objective,
okay.
I mean, I don't know how anybody could not love Goonies, right?
Yes.
I
love the Goonies.
You can sit down with your kid really when they're like 5 or 6, and they can grasp the concept, and it's not too over the top, and it's just we watch Goonies here in our house. We watch it a couple times a year usually. We do the same thing with the Back to the Future movies though as well. But like 80s teen angsty 80s soundtrack, oh man. Say Anything is you and I've spoken about it before. Is just that's like one of the single most iconic scenes in film, right? Is John Cusack there?
My wife and I went to up in Rochester. They were doing a special screening of Say Anything with John Cusack. So we watched the movie, and then afterwards he came out, and then they just did like a big Q&A with him, and he talked all about it, and it was such a cool experience. It was such a cool night.
I was so I saw the day that it was happening. It came across my, whether it was Facebook or my email or whatever, and I just remember shouting at my computer, no, because I thought, man, how cool would that be? That in Your Eyes is our song, my wife and I. So
okay.
Our song. Yep. So I remember thinking, God, I missed another one of these super romantic opportunities. Although I don't think that she's within earshot right now, and she wouldn't deny it if she was. She doesn't remember most of the time that In Your Eyes is our song. It just...
Well, that would have been a nice reminder. John Cusack could have reminded her for you.
Yeah. So.
All right. Solid choices. Yeah, I do love the Goonies. I haven't showed my son that yet, so maybe that'll be a quarantine exercise we could do.
Man, it's like reading Calvin and Hobbes.
Sure, yeah.
My love of cartoons and Ed, and Eddie.
I remember
from
that,
the 90s Cartoon Network days.
Cartoon Network, yeah. I was a big Johnny Bravo guy.
Well, again, Johnny Bravo. Calvin and Hobbes, Ed, and Eddie, even Johnny Bravo, the way that they capture so simply that kind of particular period of your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, your imagination and adventure, everybody remembers having a stuffed animal best friend, right? And that was he was your guy. You went everywhere together, and everybody remembers having those friends that you built tree forts and were convinced they were pirate ships, and it's one of those things about those two kind of different forms of the same story. I don't know how I got there from Goonies, but it's having that, that being able to easily connect with that adventure and that thought process and the imagination behind it is just, I've always thought it was great.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. All right. Well, Phil, this has been a lot of fun. This has been the most fun I've had today in quarantine.
Excellent. The same here.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon, and hope you and your family stay happy, healthy, and sane.
You got it. I hope the same for you guys. We'll, we got to get out of the house at some point, right?
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, buddy. See you next time.
You got it, Nick.
Right, bye.
Thanks, Phil.
It's a weird library.
What a fun interview.
I'm not going to... You had to get your classic line in there.
Yeah.
It is a very strange place in all the right ways. I mean,
is it haunted?
That basement, I'm not one to believe in those sorts of things. I can tell you our first guest, Sally Jacoby Murphy, has been down in this basement, and she would swear that it's haunted. So, take that with a grain of salt. I don't know. But it's such a cool and interesting place, in very different than the David A. Howe Library, which also has a lot of like weird nooks and unusual spaces.
Yeah.
Like this place, because it's like a non-traditional building, just lends itself to a lot of like weird stuff. So I'm always fascinated. Like I've done a tour of that building a couple of times now, and I'm always fascinated to see it. So
look, it's not that I don't believe in ghosts. It's more that I don't not believe in ghosts. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yes.
I do not.
I don't necessarily like. You don't believe in ghosts.
No,
okay.
Hard line.
I guess I believe in ghosts until I get the evidence. You know what I mean? It's like innocent until proven guilty.
You're asking the supernatural to prove a negative to you, because that's very hard to do.
I guess I'm asking not the supernatural, the scientists to prove that there are no ghosts.
Yeah, but see,
I want 100%. I want 100% accuracy.
That's not where the burden of proof lies.
It's the same thing with aliens. You know what I mean? It's like when people are like, "Oh, do you believe in aliens?" I'm like, "Well, I don't not believe in aliens."
Right. I guess if you transfer it to like a courtroom scenario, I mean, you can easily. Let's just say I murdered someone. Okay.
Oh my God.
You could conceivably prove that I did in fact murder someone, but if I didn't murder someone, how are you going to prove that I didn't murder someone? You know what I'm saying? There's no facts to back that up because it didn't happen.
Wait, so you're saying there's no facts to prove that you didn't murder someone?
Yes, but you're no.
You're saying all the facts we have do not prove.
You can't
your alibi, the DNA on the scene,
like
nothing.
I can't prove that you were not an extra on Dawson's Creek. I can't prove that. I don't think it's true. I don't have evidence that proves that it is, but I also can't definitively say that it didn't happen.
Well, in 1997, I was 11, so I'd be a very specific extra on Dawson's Creek.
Maybe you didn't want to wait for your life to be over, Maybe
that's true.
On Dawson's Creek. So the point is,
Boy, Dawson, do you like Joe or what?
If you're waiting for scientists to prove to you that there are no ghosts, you got a long wait, son.
Right. Okay, I'm just saying that sometimes at night when all the lights are off and there's something like reflecting on the wall, there is a brief second where I go, "Oh, that's a ghost," and then I realize it's not, and I'm relieved. But for that brief second, I'm paralyzed with fear because I 100% in that moment believe it is a ghost. So,
well, I think we've learned a lot here today.
I think ghosts might be a long-standing like childhood fear.
Yeah. Well,
so
don't hang out in the Cohocton Public Library's basement then. That's all I can say. That's the way you feel. There's doorways that don't go anywhere. There's stairwells that don't go anywhere. It's a nightmare.
Nice.
It's a nightmare.
An asylum is what you're saying.
Well, no, not technically. Not technically. Right. Not technically. Let's just leave it at that. All right. What did you think of Phil's favorite 80s movie? Is that plus, minus? Do you approve of that choice?
To each their own.
Very diplomatic. Very diplomatic.
Each their own, yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. All right. Well, I think that's... Well,
what's your favorite 80s movie? Oh, it's Back to the Future. What am I doing?
Yeah. It's got to be Back to the Future.
Yeah.
But I really like Short Circuit, too. Anything with Steve Guttenberg. What am I going to say? I don't like it? 3 Men and a Baby, Police Academy 1 through 4. Forget it. You know? All right. Anything else you want to add about Steve Guttenberg, or should we put a button on this?
I guess it's one of those things where, like, we can't really know who failed who in that situation, Hollywood or Guttenberg.
True. True. That is so true. Well, once again, our thanks to Steve Guttenberg and our guest, Phil Trautman. Phil, thank you. You can find out more about the Cohocton Public Library on any of their social media platforms or at cohoctonlibrary.org. That's going to do it for this Off the Books episode of the All the Books Show. Join us on the next proper episode as we talk a lot about Batman's favorite sidekick, Robin.